Welcome to the Black Box App Podcast. Really excited today. My name's Kenneth L. Johnson. I got my man with me today, Frank Brady. Listen, I connect through with this brother all the time on Instagram. I see his work. I know him through other avenues and just other acknowledgments and recognitions that he's received. And I'm just excited to have him on the podcast today. Frank, welcome to the Black Box App Podcast.
Hey, man, thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor and a privilege to be here and, just to share this platform and this space. Thank you for having me.
Man, when I first decided to put it together, I was making names of people I wanted on the platform, and I was like, Frank Brady. I just need that energy, man. So I love your energy. If you don't mind, tell the audience who you are, what you do, and how you position yourself in this space.
Oh, yeah, beautiful. So again, this is Frank E. Brady. I'm blessed to be a combination of things. I'm an educational consultant, first and foremost. I have a passion for working with youth and young people and helping school districts improve the way that they interact with social, emotional learning and emotional intelligence, right? I'm also an advertising and marketing consultant, creative arts advertising and marketing consultant. I have the pleasure of helping companies or organizations craft original content through the arts to reach their target demographics.
Man, you're doing the work out here. Branding is so important now, and I see you brand genuinely. And that's what I appreciate about you, your platforms. Like I said, I follow you on IG, and your consistency is admirable. Always supporting people, always bringing energy, and always a call to action. Tell me where that comes from.
Man, thank you for recognizing that. That really just comes from realizing that, if you want to be supported, you have to support others, right? So Alfred Edmond Jr., man, the CVP Vice of Black Enterprise, he taught me this really great concept of, again, support to be supported, lift as you climb, so for me, it's about how do I, as I'm climbing the ladder in my life, provide an opportunity to pull somebody up right behind me, yes. Right? Because someone in front of me is doing the same thing for me, so that's where that mentality comes from. Spirit of collaboration, rather than competition. I like to collaborate.
Now, I know you're a BE Modern Man, as am I. It's interesting. I just was on Alfred's Beyond the Hype interview series last week. Love that dude. He does great work. But that's what got you on my radar, the BE Modern Man stuff, man. So tell me about what that meant to you. Like, it meant a lot to me, and I shared that with Alfred. What did that mean to you?
Man, I think for me, it meant the world. As a child, I came up reading Black Enterprise, the magazine in the stores, It's Your World with Black Enterprise, the TV show that used to come on when I was young. So I always idolized the platform and the knowledge and the resources. So to be selected as a part of their campaign, the BE Modern Man 100 campaign, and then also to be selected as the Man of the Year for 2018, BE Modern Man of the Year for 2018, that was just incredible. So for me, it's been life-changing. Just my involvement, association, connection with Black Enterprise, and just the opportunities and the platform they've afforded me.
Wow, I appreciate it. So, this is the Black Box App platform. Needless to say, Black Box is a career consciousness portal for Black men. Just tell me your thoughts. I know when I came to you about coming on the podcast, and you were just 100%, you're like, let's do it. So tell me why you believe a platform to support the careers for Black men is important.
Well, I believe in asset mapping and resource, allocation the proper way, but from a relational mindset, from a mindset of for us, by us, shout out to Fubu. And checking out the platform and seeing the way it's built, I just feel like it's necessary because we have to be able to provide our own opportunities and access to resources, to jobs, to opportunities, because sometimes they are hard to come by. And if someone doesn't aggregate those in a way that is accessible, then a lot of times we will waste a lot of time looking all over the place. So I think that's why it's important for me.
Amazing. All right, so speaking of important, I think it's important for us when we have people like you on to share a conversation about what our responsibilities are and what we should be doing at each level of our careers. So I'd like you to give some advice to individuals that are at an entry level, at a mid-career, and at a senior level career. What advice do you have for people, Black men specifically, that are out here in those three areas?
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So I say from a standpoint of entry level, you have to be a sponge at an entry level, man. You have to be a sponge and have mentorship, because I believe having mentorship allows you to, I won't say skip some of the tough lessons that, your mentors had to make or learn, but it does allow you to get the lesson without the experience or the pain. If you can skip the pain and get the lesson, you don't always got to learn from the scars. Sometimes you can learn just from the lessons and skip the scar part, and get that. I say that if you have an entry level, figure out what is your value that you're bringing to the company. Because a lot of times when we work for these companies and corporations, we look at, well, what are they giving to us? But we're also the commodity ourselves. We are the product, we are the brand. What are we fully bringing to them? And as we figure that out, also document what you do. I would say that's for entry level. For mid-level management, man, I think, this is the time at mid-level management to get all you can from the company. What are the resources that they offer you? What are the certifications you can get? What are the professional developments you can get? Maximize all of the resources that you can get as an employee in any type of corporation you're in at the mid-level piece. Get mentorship that's in the C-suite level as well. If that's the trajectory that you aspire to climb to, get that mentorship around you so you can understand, what are the expectations and obligations, what are the outcomes that they're looking for? What's the language? How's the culture change? Because the higher up you go, the culture shifts, right? It's different at the ground level than it is at the top level. So mid-level management also at that time, I would also say be very in tune with who you're managing, very in tune, because you're bringing the culture and the ground level with you to the top. And sometimes what will end up happening is when you get to the higher levels and you're not on the ground level as much, it can be easy to get out of touch with what are the needs of the employees you're working with on the ground level, right? And lastly, I think we said we're at C-suite, right?
Senior level.
Senior level. Well, so senior level, I would say make sure you're able to get down to the ground level and to keep your perspective clear on, who you're managing or who you're overseeing, I should say, right? Because the needs at those at the beginning level, those entry level folks are where you once were. And you always want to keep that perspective in mind. Even as time will evolve, even as you will evolve as a professional, you want to keep that in mind. And then you also want to be looking for, well, what are the opportunities for training and development, for exposure, partnerships that I can bring to the company that will benefit mid-level, and entry-level folks especially, right? Because it is a pipeline, essentially, that we're creating from the entry level all the way up to senior level.
Yeah, definitely a pipeline. It's a pipeline, and I think if you're at the senior level, the only way you can keep filling that funnel is for you to be actively involved with people. I don't like saying under you, but people that are aspiring to get where you're at, right? Just keep pulling them into the funnel, and then we start creating our own pipelines that are referral networks, support systems, and just future candidates for C-suite opportunities. And that's the big piece with some of the work we do at East Coast Executives, but more importantly here at Blackbox. I want to talk to you about what success means to you right now in your career. What is success for you?
Well, success for me at one point just meant, money, all the attributes, right? Money, office, cars, just exposure. But I think at this point in my career, man, success for me means how am I doing as a whole human being, right? Because how is my mental and emotional wellness? Is that part of my life strong? My health, because what your health is what your wealth will be, right? Your health, just mental, emotional, physical, that will translate to what you are able to produce and execute on. So I think for me, if that's what success looks like, how am I as a whole person? And how am I using this whole person that I'm growing into becoming, continually evolving and working on to impact the lives of others through my experiences and resources? How am I doing that? Because I really do believe service is the price that we pay to live on this earth. So how am I being a service to my community, to humanity as well?
Wow. So where'd that come from? Like when I speak about my service orientation and when people ask me those questions, I always tell them, listen, I came from that. Like my parents, they're all about that, man. In the neighborhood I'm from, my parents are the ones that kind of led the committee for this Black homecoming and supporting community. My father, for years, he worked for a candy company and like a major candy manufacturer. And he used to come through the neighborhood and pop the trunk and just be handing out stuff. It used to go crazy. Anybody from that neighborhood will tell you, when my dad's car pulled up, it was a zoo. It was a zoo. But that's the give back, right? And but he was the guy that was getting out in the suit, and people got to see that as a Black man, right? So I get it. I get what you're speaking about. How do you find avenues to kind of touch people without necessarily even speaking to them? I know you're out here, man. You do a lot of stuff. Tell me about some of the things that you're doing in your community, because are you out in Connecticut?
Yes.
Yeah. So tell me some of the things that you're doing out there and nationwide that supports kind of that frame of thinking.
Well, now thank you so much for, shout out to your father and the example that he set, because it's obviously the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, right?
Appreciate that.
So shout out to him, man. And we benefit from that in our community. We have exposure is important. It's important to see Black men multifaceted in suits, in hoodies, and everything that we represent, our experience. So shout out to him. For me, the way that I find a way to help people without always, being the one to be the high touch supplier of hope, of opportunities is, one, I try to train people, right? Tupac Shakur said, I may not change the world, but I will spark the mind that'll change the world, right? And I learned a long time ago that I can't change the world on my own, but I can inspire others. So, I try and create workshops and training opportunities that will help spread information on mental health, emotional intelligence, how to work effectively with youth and teenagers, based on or coordinate events that speak to those certain topics so that I can have a reach of individuals that now reach others, right? I try to make sure that I'm connecting individuals within my city and space that may be doing certain similar work, but they're in silos and don't know about each other because they're so busy doing the work. So I make sure I can make those connections and see some collaborations happen that don't necessarily need me to facilitate the work, but just facilitate the bridge.
Yes.
So for me, that's how I multiply my impact, because it's not the best, it's not the smartest thing to try and do it all on your own. If you want to go far, go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go together with other folks. And in terms of what I'm doing just across the country, I have really stepped into this space at this point in my life on just advocating for the healing of the whole individual, getting past trauma, getting past situations and things that have kept people locked in shackles. One thing I've realized and what I've evolved into learning is that so many of us are living but we're not fully alive. Like a lot of us are, the trend right now is to scream, "We outside." But some of us aren't even, we scream, "We outside," but some of us aren't really even fully alive inside because we're still shackled to the things of our past that we haven't processed through, gotten past. And that stuff, it impacts us. Whatever we don't deal with deals with us, even if we don't deal with it.
Man, I want to talk to you about that. You done took me somewhere now. So I love when you go by the hope dealer, right? Like Frank E. Brady, the hope dealer. I love that. And you live it, man. I see you out here, man. You live it, ciphers, everything. I really see you, as you can tell. But where'd that come from? What, like, educationally, what's your background? Or like, where'd that piece? Are you, like, when I hear you, even when it's even your delivery to groups, I'm like, this dude is like a therapist. And he's rapping it sometimes. And I'm like, these kids don't even know what's happening right here. But Frank is delivering therapy right now. So I just get so, I'm so impressed by it, man. Listen, anybody that's here on the Black Box App podcast, if you don't know about Frank E. Brady, please Google through, check him out. I'll have him leave his contact information before we get off of here. But Frank, where'd that come from? Tell me where you got this.
Man, I think it's so funny you say that, man, because I always said, man, I've been called a therapist a lot of times. I know I even contemplated going back to school for it, but it came from really the household I grew up in. My family has dealt with, mental health issues in my family. And as a child, I had to cope through that. And not only coping through that, but coping through growing up. I'm from, New York, New Rochelle, New York, originally, right? I have some Bronx roots, of course, but from New Rochelle, New York, and coming up in the community, and just the different things I had to navigate through as a young Black male, dealing with gangs, drugs, the typical script and breakdown that happens in inner cities, and the emotional impact that it took on me at an early age that I didn't even realize that followed me into my adulthood. The things that I had to work through as an adult that happened to me as a child, early childhood trauma. So those two different factors mixed together really set me on this path of hope, right? Like I needed to be who I needed as a child, right? Two, I needed to help, dispel the stigma of just dealing with emotions that we deal with as just Black people, right? Dealing with our emotions, dealing with our trauma, and having effective ways to cope that are healthy and positive. So my upbringing lit the spark in me to be able to do that. And I realized everyone receives information in different ways, right? Through different aspects. So I'm gifted to be able to speak. I'm also a poet. I can rap as well. I could facilitate. I have different, avenues of communication to get the message across to the audience. And youth was my foundational audience, but it's also now grown beyond youth. I've been doing stuff with corporations, nonprofits, foundations, which is really interesting. But it just really comes down to we're all people. Adults are just kids that grew up, right? We're all people, we're all individuals. So, I just have this thirst, this purpose inside of me to really impact people in a way that's going to leave them better than I found them. And that's where this really comes from, man. It was done to me as a child through my grandparents, my grandmother, my grandfather, through the director of the Boys and Girls Club when I was coming up, so I have this obligation and responsibility to pay forward what was paid into me.
Man, that's a powerful thing once you figure that piece out. A big part of the work we do is really around that, right? Like this is an assignment for me. Like I was put here to do the stuff that I do, right? And it's through a recruitment lens and a talent acquisition lens and supporting people in that fashion. But recently I've spoken to quite a few brothers, including yourself now, who've spoken to me about wellness. And that's becoming more and more important. When did that, it sounds like this is something that you were aware of way before it became vogue.
Yeah, I like I said, man, my family, we have, some mental health, some issues with mental health in our family, right? And I grew up in that, felt ostracized in that as a result. And, there was a time when talking about wellness and just healing was so taboo or corny or, it wasn't popular. It wasn't trendy. It wasn't even the wave, right? And I think for me, I grew up with it. I was always able to communicate with these different individuals, and even my code switching and my way to navigate, my community, the school I went to, which wasn't in the community that I grew up in, right? My Caribbean household, the church I went to when I was a child, like all of those spaces required me to communicate just a little differently. But even my code switching was a survival tactic or a survival mechanism, right? And I think coming up that way, having to be balanced, but still dealing with these challenges, it made me realize, look, this is hard. You see what I'm saying? This is hard. And as I grew up and had more challenges to deal with, more crisis situations to deal with. I make the joke that said I had been dealing with crisis for 20 years before I realized I was living in crisis.
Yeah, exactly.
In a constant state of fight or flight. You know, whether it's with young people in the education system, dealing with individuals in my community as well. It was constant space of reactivity, right? Which isn't necessarily the most healthy thing. It's that, so I need, for me, learning how to regulate and understand that and be able to now start to respond rather than react. I wanted to share that gift and that skill set with so many other people that may struggle with that, because I know it was difficult for me for a long time. And information and knowledge and education is nothing if we can't give it away, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's where it started from, stemmed from for me.
No, hey, let's talk about this a little, because I think there may be some people on this podcast that'll listen that don't completely understand what code switching is. So I love that you brought that term up, but please share with the audience what that means.
Man, I mean, from the base level, code switching for me is essentially, you know, every community, every culture, you know, every friend group sometimes speaks a different language, right? You know, and sometimes you as an individual, there was this meme that Snoop Dogg put out, right? And it said, he was like, this is me with all my different friend groups. And one friend group, Snoop Dogg was a wrestler. The other one, you know, he had a robe on. The other one, you know, he was playing basketball. The other one, he was rapping with a Korean group, right? Rapping in Korean. The other one, he was a chef with Martha Stewart, right? It's the same Snoop Dogg, right? But
I saw that.
You see what I'm talking about, right? The meme was hilarious. But he had to translate who he was in different circles and friend groups, because, you know, he couldn't kick that Korean to Martha Stewart while he was cooking. Right? He couldn't. It'd be a language.
They might have did some Korean barbecue though. That would have worked.
Oh, you're right. You're right. So it's just being able to communicate differently in different groups. You know, a lot of us, you know, at times we can even take it to corporate America too. You know, code switching is, there's a certain type of, you know, vernacular that I have to speak in the boardroom that I can't speak in the same way to my people in my community, right? I speak to my inner circle a different way than I speak to if I'm in an executive level meeting, right? My ebonics and my slang might not be welcome in corporate. We always talk about that as well, right? You know, the innate language, and I call it a language, right? The innate language that we have from our community isn't necessarily, you know, welcomed in professional America or corporate America, even though corporate America profits off of our culture. Yeah. And that same, you know, slang talk, that slang culture, urban America, you know, they profit off of it, but it's a way of survival. We have to speak different languages in different spaces, because sometimes, especially when we're younger, who we are isn't always welcome in each space, right? Or how come out naturally. Now, as we grow, we learn to kind of meld it and start to now be who we are 100% in each space. So we don't necessarily have to curb how we speak and what we say, but you notice that we have to get to a certain level of success and access to be able to show up all the way authentically. Yes. You know, unfortunately.
Well, look, man, I will share this. The language of hope that you give is welcomed in any room, my friend. It's Frank E. Brady, the Hope Dealer, my guy. Listen, I really, listen, I could do this all day with you. I already know that. I really, really appreciate you coming through. Any last words for the listeners of the podcast?
I'll just say this, you know, I'm grateful to be on here first and foremost again. And if I could leave anyone with just last words, I'll just say this, you know, the glass ceiling of your professionalism sometimes is what you choose to do with overcoming the internal obstacles in your life, right? There's a glass ceiling that happens that sometimes we can't bust past until we talk to and work on what are the inner things that are happening, right? Because sometimes unmanaged emotions, you know, how we respond to conflict, how we deal with communication. Once we get past that glass ceiling, we could actually fall back to the ceiling because we don't have a handle on what's going on inside. So, really take that time to really deal with and handle what's going on inside of you. Grow, heal, because that is directly connected to the trajectory of your career and your success financially.
Frank E. Brady, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, Frank, tell them how to stay in touch with you and stay attached to you and your work.
Yes, indeed. You can, first and foremost, you can get to me at my website, www.frankebrady.com, www.frankebrady.com. Heavy on the E, right? You can get to me on LinkedIn at Frank E. Brady, the Hope Dealer on LinkedIn, on Instagram at Frank E. Brady, all social media handles at Frank E. Brady.